few days. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of our TNCBA pre and post show. We're going to be looking back at Boone tournament today and also jumping into this last leg of the season. It's coming down to the wire. It's not going to be long. Things are going to be wrapping up. We're going to be crowning a team of the year and an angler of the year. We got Kelsey here again with us as our co-host. So we're going to jump into all this, but first I want to say thank you to all these partners that we've had this year. We've had several new ones come on board, like Kingsport CPA, Uncle Ray's, Todd Harkle Road Roofing, Tri-C Logistics, Knoxville TVA, Employees Credit Union. We've had Dixie Custom Rods with us for a while now. Watson's has always been a big supporter, and Wicked Weights as well. So we just want to say thank you to all of them. This one here is going to be presented to us by Uncle Ray's. They're going to be taking care of our next day tournament that we're going to have coming up. So we appreciate them, but definitely want to say thank you to all of those partners that we have had. So Kelsey, looking at the schedule, man, we've come a long ways already. We've fished a lot of tournaments, but it's
been
flown.
a busy year.
It's been a busy year. It's flown by though. It's crazy to think.
Oh yeah.
That we're already staring down the end of what our last three regular season events. So we got Douglas coming up. We've got Boone in October back to daytime. We've got Watauga at the beginning of November, and that's going to wrap up our regular season. For those of you not familiar with it, we do 10 regular season events, and then we have our one classic, and that one postseason event, I guess you would say there at the end, decides our angler of the year, because all of our other events pay team points. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Kelsey, so far on this schedule, buddy, what's been your favorite tournament of the year so far?
Well, I've got two, but
well, throw them both out there, rank them up. What would be number one? What would be number two?
Well, I mean, kind of biased here with the ones we've done good in, but like South Holston was a good tournament for us, and so was Watauga.
Be more specific. We talking South Holston?
South Holston, the first South Holston tournament,
February. South Holston. Okay, so that nice cold winter deal.
That cold tournament, and then Watauga in June. That was a good tournament for us, and I think that was a good tournament for a lot of people. Like I know there was a lot of people caught fish in that one. Not so much on the first South Holston tournament, but that one was a tough one. But
yes. And South Holston there in February was rough because, I mean, the weather conditions, thinking back to that was probably the most miserable I've been in a while, being out in a boat, as far as just like cold, wet. Like that one was pretty nasty. But I'm with you. That Watauga tournament, that Watauga there in late, in that post-spawn, late May, June, even trickling into July, that Watauga tournament always seems to produce catches. People have a good time. The bite is, you can do a lot of different things. I mean, we saw in the video with you all, you were fishing for some that were garden fry. You had some topwater fish, spinner baits, and there's still some good quality fish out there. I know several people even talked about seeing some good ones up under some docks and some different places that they couldn't get to bite. So I'm with you. I really like that one.
That one I would say would have to be the
number
top
one
of the two. Yeah, because I mean, it was a good fish catching tournament. I mean, a lot of people brought in some good quality fish. And I mean, the conditions, it was a tournament that you could do a multitude of different things. I mean, it kind of got slower there in the afternoon. I mean, that heat, the Bluebird skies, that heat, it really kind of changed the conditions and made you have to really evaluate what you were doing. So, I mean, that tournament was I think that was probably one of our better tournaments as far as fish catching and everybody else. I mean, everybody doing a really good.
Definitely. And Douglas, since I always loved Douglas there in April or May, but Douglas has still been, these lakes are still reeling from everybody that's been off work and the pandemic that's been going on, because there's been so much pressure out there on these lakes. And Douglas was a madhouse at the ramp.
Oh yeah.
Chickamauga, you never have a tournament going on in the middle of the week when we were there, and we had that Ray Scott team or the Ray Scott championship that was going on there for the ABA, and they had like 200 and some boats, and their tournament actually started midweek, so that one was crazy. So yeah, but I definitely have to agree with you. So far, I think Watauga has been my favorite, but let's go ahead and dive into the results from our last one, which was not going to be people's favorite on the year. And that was our trip back to Boone Lake. Boone, guys, is finally filled back up. They've got the dam fixed. It was at full pull, something we haven't seen in 7-8 years. And Kelsey, it was a lot of water for these fish.
Oh yeah.
That was totally new to them. And I mean, you've got so many fish that had never seen this lake full. So, and I think one of the biggest things for me, and even going when me and Dad went out to practice, was like certain areas of the lake, you would go down a wall and there would be tons of brush where somebody didn't clear it off or they couldn't get to it. And then another 10-yard stretch in front of somebody else's house was littered with brush and standing timber and stuff. So it was hard to know, and it's going to take some time to figure out kind of the layout of this lake again. Did y'all kind of find that same thing? Did you stay away from brush? Did y'all find some clear?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. Most of the places that we fished, I mean, there was still quite a bit of stuff. I mean, there were some that had less, but I mean, it was just, I felt like it was harder for where we were fishing on the more or less on the lower end of the lake, trying to find places that were clearer. And I mean, one thing about that tournament is, I mean, this is just one of my theories. I mean, what made it a little bit tougher than, and I do see it progressing later on as things just start to stabilize more, is, the lake has been down for so long and those fish haven't had really the places to hide like they used to. And I mean, I feel like the fish population is not what it used to be. I do think it'll get better because, I mean, with all that time with the lake down, you got striper and other predator fish in the lake. I feel like that done a lot of damage to the bait fish and the bass and everything else. So I mean, I do think that the fishing will get better on that lake as the years, and hopefully later in this year with the new Florida strain being put in there.
Those dudes are mean. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have already caught some of those. I know Dad did. I had a couple other guys tell me that they got bit by them.
I had one come up and try to eat a popar that was just as big as it.
So guys, y'all can see here. Now we do have a 3 fish limit for our night tournaments to try to help with just fish care and keeping those fish alive. It also makes things a little more competitive at night. But you can see here that Dad and Reg finished first with 9 pounds, 9.01, and then Rice and Leg, they're in second with 6.09, which I think they only had 2, right? They had one big bass and then they had another one. I think they only had 2 in that case.
Yeah, they had 2 big ones.
And then you can see there we had a tie for third with 341. So it dropped off very quickly. And again, this is a tournament where we had 16, 17 boats. So several teams were struggling. Several of us, myself included, zeroed. No, I take that back. I was thinking back on the other tournament that they had one around 5. So Leg and them had a 374. It's down there at the bottom. I wasn't even looking at that. Was big fish. So I think they did have 3, but I think they had a smaller spot that they couldn't get rid of.
That's exactly right. Yes, you're right.
So guys, I know Dad and Reg ended up getting on a bite after midnight with a chatterbait. And for them, it was more key to focus in on clearer points, clear areas that had boulders on it. And for me, a little bit, Kelsey, Boone has kind of taken a turn like Cherokee, where smallmouth have become much more dominant somewhat on Boone Lake than maybe in the past. And it seems like you fish this kind of like Cherokee in that you're looking for those boulders out there on these points and stuff. So you can fish it a little bit different than maybe in the past. If you're targeting those smallmouth.
Well, and one thing I was going to say is I think they're a little better at playing hide and go seek than most other fish too. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like they've had more chances to grow
Yeah.
through this time because I mean, they're quick, they're powerful, they're probably one of the strongest species of bass that you'll catch.
And they'll get out there
per pound.
and they'll get out there and be
Mhm.
pelagic and move around and follow that bait just like the striper and stuff will. So I think
Oh
maybe they've
yeah.
had some better spawns than the others. So they caught him on a black and blue 1/2 ounce chatterbait. Dad was throwing it out there, letting it hit the bottom, slow rolling that thing back in when he'd get bit around those boulders. But again, I heard a lot of jig, a lot of some spinnerbait mixed in, the child rig, which is you Texas rig a Ned rig or the TRD, and then you put a nail weight in the end of it, and it comes through that brush. It comes through rock really well. So that child rig is a new one, and it's always something different. Kelsey, you've had so many different ways of rigging baits, and it's all about getting a little bit different action. You pick that thing up instead of it falling head first, it shoots
Oh
backwards.
yeah.
So changing up your actions is key, and making sure that you're trying to do something different than everybody else is doing. And I know Josh with us got a few bites like that with that child rig. But it definitely seemed like for me and Josh, and then I know for Dad and Reg, that like there was a very small window around that midnight to 1 time frame that these fish moved up into these areas and started eating.
Oh yeah.
Because we didn't get any bites before then, and I know Dad and Reg didn't. Were you all getting many bites earlier in the night? Did y'all have any different experience with that?
I mean, we had caught, well, I say Dad had caught two like before this, when we pulled up to our first spot before the sun had went down.
Okay.
And I mean, non-keepers, but I mean, two that were 14 and a half, smallmouth and largemouth, throwing a Cinco. And then later on in the evening, I want to say it was closer towards the end of the tournament, right around 2:30, 2:45, something like that, is when he caught our final keeper. I mean, our only keeper.
Now, what
So, I
depth?
mean,
What kind of depth were you all in?
we were looking at probably somewhere around 10 to 15 feet, something like that.
Okay.
So,
Because one thing I looked at, we weren't getting bit. We were playing or like trying to try out different depths, me and Josh. And one thing I did do, and I'd mentioned this at the meeting prior to, is I went up to his graph and I cranked the sensitivity way up and the color line way up.
mhm.
There was a thermocline forming where we were at. I don't know if there was one where you were at. And I found it interesting. Once we found that about 11 o'clock that night, I talked to Dad later, and that thermocline was super strong in that 10 to 15 foot range. And guys, when you start to see that, Kelsey and them caught their fish there. Dad and Reg were sitting there boating about 20 and throwing into that shallower water, 10 to 15 with those boulders. When Josh and I were getting bit on some points, we were in about 10 to 15. So when you see that thermocline starting to form, lock in on it, like key in on that depth, whether you're fishing a bluff, whether you're fishing a point, a flat, whatever it may be, key in on that depth range where you see that thermocline forming, because that's where that oxygen rich water is at, and that's where they're going to be
Mhm.
holding. So I think to play into that, I think we need to carry that on over into Douglas coming up here for the next night tournament. The only thing that might play devil's advocate with that is all this water that we're potentially going to get
Oh yeah.
from the hurricane rolling through, guys. Douglas has been doing some weird things, but we'll set that off to the side for just a second. We'll come back to that later. So Boone was rough. Boone was tough. We're going to get another shot at Boone later on in October. We're going to get another shot at the Classic, and I think it's going to get better though.
Yeah.
I think as they start to pull that water down just a little bit out of some of those trees, it's going to make those fish position a little bit more predictable, and it's going to take a little bit of cover away from them. So what are your thoughts on that? You think it's going to liven up a little bit for us in the coming events
I
on
think
Boone?
I think it'll help a little bit, but I mean, I think the only thing that may be a factor that may be difficult is when they start chasing shad. You can't just go run and beat the banks with the crankbait. you're gonna have to be really careful with that.
Yeah, but I will say that right now they really haven't had pockets to push them back into the shad
Mm-mm,
or creeks to
mm-mm.
move up into. They're
No.
finally going to have enough water when those shads start to move back in there. They're going to have some pockets and some creeks to really congregate it up in. So that might help get that bait away from those striper a little bit, get the bass a little isolated by themselves where they've got their own
Oh yeah.
forage and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. But let's talk about the points for a second, Kels.
All right.
Dude, the stuff's tight, man. Tight.
It's a mess.
You can see the top six there. Dad and Lee with 247, you in second with 246, myself with 245. Then we got 242, 242, 241. And we go back a few years. That 247 to 241 is a pretty big gap because by the time we get down to the classic, get down to the end of the year, don't have a huge turnout. There's not a lot of people that are going to get in between you. But right now, averaging 18, 20 boats, get down towards the end, and we're going to have, the way it's looking, we're going to have 30 anglers, maybe a few more eligible for the classic. So now you do that, and oh my gosh, like the point spread could be huge. So, I mean, this top six is completely in play. I'm going to jump over here to the next slide. And you can see here going back a little bit further to some of the guys that are still in there. I mean, if you say 30 guys are in the classic and you've got a 30-point spread, now I know there's some drops to be played in there as well, but I mean, technically these guys back here, Mark Rice, Cody Snyder, Sean Renfro, these guys around 229, 228, those guys are still in play for jumping into that top six and being able to, make a charge. So if they can put together a good Douglas, a good Boone, and then a good Watauga, they're going to be in play for that with the number of people we've got fishing and the type of spread we're going to have. So I'm going to be interested to see how this plays out. And it's always interesting to see, because these fall tournaments, they get tough.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
it's one of those times of the year. I feel like the spring's always the best because they're a little more predictable. They're doing their thing. The fall is just one of those times you really have to put your time on the water and really figure out where those fish are and where they're going, because sometimes, you think they're going to be here, but they're actually on the other side,
Yeah.
Like when they're chasing bait, they're not as predictable as most people would think.
Yeah, and when they get that fall transition going on, it kills me because you're like, oh, the bait's back here, and then the fish ain't there yet.
Mm-mm.
Like they haven't caught up to them or whatever, and that fall transition is just so hard to stay on top of them. And where we just weekend dudes fishing maybe once or twice a month on the weekends, that's hard to do to try to keep up with them. So I will be interested to see. Like I said, we've got one more night tournament coming up on Douglas that we'll look at here in a second. But with the events that we've got coming up, Boone and Watauga in the fall can be Boone's completely a wild card. We don't know. That's an unknown lake. It's like fishing. It's like everybody getting on an airplane like they used to for the classic and not finding out where they're going until they get there. But Watauga has that potential to either be brutal or
it can be really good,
or it can be awesome. Like I know we've had some events in the past that I've gotten to have a good catch on there, and like the big smallmouth are pulled up. But I think it's all going to depend on the kind of weather we have going through October. Is it going to cool down? If it does, Watauga 1st of November is going to be lights out killer. Does it stay 80, 90 degrees through October? Then Watauga is going to be a pain in the butt, because I mean, that place, it takes so long to cool down.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that it's going to stay warmer than most lakes. It takes longer to cool off than the others. So I'm going to be interested to see there. But yeah, it's awesome to see with the points, the way they're setting up. Tons of people still in play for making that top six. The AOY is still completely in play right now with everything going on. You and Dad definitely are sitting really good right now. You've used up one of your drops. Dad hasn't used up both his, and I guess I should say, when I say used up his drops, you still have a 0 out there that you could blow.
Yeah.
And Dad has 2 that he could fumble over. So
yeah,
that's a big help, knowing that you still have that 0 out there. We've got several people that have kind of already used up those 2 zeros, those 2 goose eggs, as their drops. So they've got to make sure that they come through, because another 0 is gonna put them out of it. So that's good to see that we've got some tight points races going on. All right, man. I know you've been nervous about this one all year long. You set the tone on this one super early in that Holston tournament that we went back to.
Yeah.
And like we said, Watauga could be for all 3 of these. Like, I don't see Douglas. I don't see Douglas messing with any of them.
No.
I just don't feel it's going to happen. It took 12 pounds to win a college event down yesterday on Douglas, and that's 5 fish. So
yeah,
like, I just don't think Douglas is going to be in its prime to put out something big to knock any of these off. Boone, no, I don't see it happening right now, just with the state of that place. But Watauga could potentially knock the largemouth off, the smallmouth off, and the spotted bass. But again, guys, this is our big bass battle for the year. This is presented to us by Knoxville TVA Credit Union. And what we've done is we've set up to compete for the biggest largemouth, the biggest smallmouth, and the biggest spot. And we'll have prizes for those at the end of the year. But you can see there that we've got a 732 leading largemouth, a 479 leading smallmouth, and a 309 leading spot. So like I said, I think if those survive through Watauga, I think they got a good chance of standing, even with the Classic being out there. But that'll be the telltale, because like I said, if it cools off and they start feeding up, those spots can get really fat and
really
those,
fast.
yeah, and those smallmouth could be pushing over 5 and stuff. And we definitely know. I mean, we've had our big largemouth for the year come off of Watauga, with it being close to 9. So there's some big largemouth swimming around in that lake. So we looked at Boone, guys. We've recapped that. The previews for these lakes coming up. Douglas is in, I'll just say, turmoil right now. The last big move, tropical depression, hurricane, storm, whatever that came through, put it back up 2 feet above full pool. So it's back at the brim. And like reports I see on Facebook and stuff is like, there's a ton of debris up in the river, as you would expect. We've got more rain coming.
And they're talking about pushing that water through. I mean, if you follow TVA and stuff like that, they're talking about the preparations they're making in all the TVA lakes.
And see, my question is, how much
in Douglas and all of them?
How much can they push through? Because I mean, if like
it all goes down that way,
yeah, I mean it's coming up through Mississippi, so it's going to be hitting like Pickwick and Kentucky Lake, and that's where all this is going to be sent. Like, how much can they push through? And how much are they going to hold it back? So it's like, where are we going to be on September 17th? Because I mean, it could be that point of, is it just super full, super blown out? And is this our last hurricane? I doubt that it's going to be the last storm roll through. We'll probably have another one.
There's already a couple more out in the middle of the Atlantic.
I feel like my greatest hope is that they're going to be sucking it down. Because I think I would rather it be falling than for it to still be up full. I would like for those fish to have to kind of commit to pulling out more and commit to maybe points or the steeper bluffs. I just feel like for us, it's going to make them a lot easier to kind of key in on. I worry about if that lake fills up even more or stays up there full, and especially with debris and the trash, it's going to make it muddy up in the river. That one worries me a little bit, but the nice thing is 12-inch largemouth.
It's true.
That is nice.
That is true.
that is nice. And guys, the smallmouth, I think, are still 20. And you can only keep one. So smallmouth are going to be, if you find one over 20, like, more power to yeah.
You're doing good.
You're doing really good.
You're doing really good.
So more power to you. So Kelsey, how right now, just sitting here thinking, how are you going to attack Douglas in your mind if you get to play it out the way you want to? What's going to be game plan?
I am thinking about all this rain that we're going to be getting and all that. So I'm thinking you're still going to be looking at spinner baits, moving baits, something that puts off a vibration, because I do think these waters are going to be pretty muddy when we get to it, just depending on what kind of rain we get in the weeks to come. But something that puts off a good vibration. I know I've done really good in the past with a nighttime crankbait, something that puts off a little rattle sound and a vibration so they can feel it. And I think they're going to be, if it is a falling transition, I think they're going to be a little more shallower than we think, some of them. I still think that 10 to 15 foot range is probably going to be a good range to be targeting on this tournament, because it's still going to be kind of warm, but I mean, that's just the kind of area I'm thinking they'll be in.
I agree. And it's funny how the nighttime crankbait really plays out always here on Douglas. Like it always seems like people catch some good quality. And I know we had it still always seems to be that same way later in the night. We're getting into that 1 to 3 o'clock range, that bite moves up there shallow, but it always does. It seems like a crankbait really plays well on Douglas at night, which I'm all game for. If I can get a moving bait in my hand, be a little bit more power with it, not so much finesse, that will definitely keep me awake. That's the key. That's the key, is keeping me awake. But I also hope they're pulling that water, because I feel like if they start sucking that water out while we're there and we've got some current flow, those fish are going to be active. Because right now with that water coming up and it's just kind of sitting there idle right now, it hadn't been dropped. I thought it was going to drop a lot faster. I've been watching TVA because we've got a Tennessee team trail coming up the weekend before that, and I really thought they'd be pulling it back down even faster than they are, but they're not. So I really hope that they're pulling some water through there and getting those fish active and getting that current going, because I think that's what's killing those guys right now. Like I said, 12 pounds to win a college event down there yesterday. Just and that's tough. So I think we get some current rolling through there. It'll get those fish positioned. I'm with you. I think still focus on that 15 foot or less, 10 foot or less. I'll be interested to see if there's a thermocline, or if the thermocline just completely bust up because all this water flowing through the system. And what will that do to them? Just so many unknowns. But I like the fact that with Douglas, hopefully at least there's a 12-inch size limit. You're fishing for 3. You go out there with that mindset of pop you 1 or 2 before dark. Surely to goodness we can find us a quick top water thing or something, really quick, put a couple in the boat and then go grind it out the rest of the night. Is kind of what I'm thinking. But I kind of play these lakes similar to everything else. Once you get into that summer, kind of that mid lake to upper lake section seems to be better than that lower end, where there's so much more volume of water and they don't feel that current as much. So especially if they're pulling some water, I'm going to focus on that upper end a lot more, where they're going to feel that current a lot more. So
channel swings are your friend. Swings are your friend.
Anywhere you can find some eddies, that bluff down through there where water's moving, even though it's not moving fast. And I think that's the thing we have to keep in mind, is even though for us, like me and you got to go to the Chickahominy that one time, we saw some current. Like that stuff was ripping. We've been on Chickamauga in the early spring.
That was dangerous.
Yeah, that was super dangerous. We've been on Chickamauga in the early spring when they are ripping some current. Like we know what current looks like. Douglas don't have that kind of current, guys. I mean, we're talking when they're flowing water through there. Chickamauga one spring was pulling, I remember 80 or 90,000 cubics through there. Douglas at its max that I think I've ever seen is like 20,000. So I mean, it's a totally different animal. But that current to those fish, 10,000 is a lot to them. So still look for those channel swings, like Kelsey said. Pay attention to your bluff. Pay attention to where there might be an eddy, even though it's not a huge one. Pay attention to those for that night tournament coming up. Then we go back to Boone in October. I think the daytime will help if the water's still up there kind of high, which I know they're going to start pulling it down after Labor Day. But I think if the water's still up in those trees and bushes, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm hoping for a bright, sunny day, possibly that gets those fish up under or in that brush. Makes them a little bit easier. They're not out roaming per se.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what I'm thinking there on Boone is if we could get a nice bright sunny day where you might be able to get around those bushes and flip in them or
Throw a spinner bait,
throw a
something
spinner
like that.
bait, swim jig.
Texas rig swim bait, something that people need to keep in mind. That's something that's weedless.
Yep.
It's easy to move around. It's easy to maneuver. Throw it in tight places. Throw it on a shorter rod, like a 6'8", something under 7 foot, and just really work with it because that's a killer bait. I mean, it's something that's done me really good in the past.
Yeah, and you've done really well with it in situations where it has to be weedless, like grass lakes and stuff. So that, like Kelsey said, that Texas rig swim bait is something you can flip and pitch into those areas and not worry about it coming through. Yeah, that's definitely a good one. So like I said, I think I really want it to be a nice sunny day there on that Boone one. And then we head to Watauga to wrap up our regular season. Like we said, it's all going to be about the lead up to it. We know the water's going to be clear. We know that the bait and the fish should have fed up a little bit. The bait should be kind of moving back. I really want it to be cold. Like it sounds stupid, but I really want a couple weeks of some cold weather to get those fish going like that. Yeah. So the year you were in the boat with me and Dad, the best year I've had up there, and we pulled into a spot, and I think you all had 3 on a crankbait and like 3 casts, and then I caught a couple on a whopper plopper that they just annihilated it, and then an A-rig, like that was a lot of fun. But I remember that the leaves were already they'd already changed quite a bit, so like it had been cold. Because I remember the pictures in the background from the weigh-in where the mountains looked gorgeous. But yeah, so I think I want it to be cold, and I want it to have been cold for a couple weeks. I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot because we go down to Chickamauga right after that Watauga tournament, so I don't want it to get too cold, but I at least want it to have had a little bit of a fall change there. I think that'd be good. So, but
Long A is another
please
another one that could be a killer bite if it works out just right.
And guys, if you've never played around with the Long A, again, Long A is a horrible sucky jerk bait. It does not do what it's intended to do very well. But man, you take that bait, you put a feather on the back hook if you want to, helps some of the buoyancy and stuff and just a little bit of the action. But you take that Long A and you throw it out there, whether you're on a bluff, on a flat, around a laydown, it don't matter. And you just slowly wake that bait across the surface, make sure you're getting that V. Oh gosh, you want to talk about some of the meanest bites.
Those and another thing that amazes me is how far those fish will come to get it, because we've watched them on the Panoptics before. We've seen a school of them sitting down about 20-30 feet, and then you'll just see them shoot up to get it. I mean,
so it is wild. So guys, that's a good point, Kelsey. That Long A could come into play there. And then we go back to Boone for the Classic late November, right before Thanksgiving. That Long A, with as many smallmouth that are in that lake now, that Long A could play again on Boone and be really, really killer. I know one thing. I'm going to be looking for Andy Hodges to come into play major on Watauga and on Boone going into those November tournaments. He loves to throw that Alabama rig, and he finds them. I don't know. The Alabama rig, we've already had those talks. I struggle to stick with it, but I look for him to play major. He gets through Douglas, we get to that other Boone, we get into these last 2. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Like I said, that A rig with him plays a lot. So I could see that playing out. But like you said, Kels, a Long A there, Watauga in November, and then Boone. I think Long A might play big in these
Oh yeah.
very last two events of the year. That would be,
Oh yeah.
you just make sure you got the GoPro running. You just make
Yeah.
sure if you're throwing that long A, guys, that's some of the best video stuff you'll see. If you check out our YouTube, we've got a few on there of some long A action, especially from Holston a couple years ago, practicing and leading up for that. Some great long A stuff. So check that out. But I think that that's going to be a big player. And these three lakes here, 4 tournaments, but 3 lakes. It's going to be a doozy the next 2, September and October. I'll be honest with you 100%. I'm extremely glad we took August off. Like,
it's been miserable.
Yeah, like the heat and stuff. And August just doesn't fish well anyways. It is so hot. September, they start to draw these lakes back down, so you get some water movement, and I think it helps out. But we know September's still going to be tough. October is going to be a funky transition. And then November. The thing is, like, you think about fall, you're like, oh, October is fall. Fall fishing around here doesn't really kick off until go back to Thanksgiving. Me and you went down. We had Thanksgiving in that cabin down on Douglas at one time and went out one evening. Oh my gosh, and just slayed them on a square bill crankbait and a buzz bait. I don't know how many we caught. And they were all
what was it? The last hour and a half, 2 hours of daylight.
Yes.
And I mean, and all of them being anywhere from 2.5 to 5 pounds would be the biggest one.
Yeah.
I mean,
and like the average ones were that 3 pound range right there. So I mean, they were just fat and feeding up. So like fall kind of kicks in later around here. So it's going to be interesting to see how things go, but we will kind of start to wrap this thing up, guys. The year has been great. We've had great turnouts. We've had some great competition. As you can see with the points, things are super tight right now. So it's going to be a fun race here going to the end, Kelsey. I know me and Dad are going to dog the snot out of y'all, you and your dad, trying to fight you for that team of the year. We'll see how this plays out and see if somebody else jumps in there and tries to steal it from us. And
come on, we got to make a comeback.
There's going to be some battling going on. Like I said, it's going to get interesting going forward. And then the angler of the year is the real one. Like I said, the angler of the year, with how much is at play there, and going into that classic where everybody's going to be fishing for their own fish, and points it's not your team anymore. It's not somebody else in the boat catches one, you both can celebrate on it. It's like you got to be out there putting your work in and getting your own and stuff. So it's going to play out. It's going to be fun to watch. 3 more regular season events, 1 more postseason or classic. Guys, we've got Uncle Ray's that's come on board for us for our October tournament. We've got Tri-Cities Logistics who's helping us out, sponsoring us for that November event on Watauga. And then we do have Kingsport CPA that has also helped and sponsored a little bit there for our classic. We'll look to see if we can get some more on that. But I think it's going to be a fun one to watch. Kelsey, talked about your 2 favorite tournaments so far. Let's wrap this thing up. The last 4 events. Okay. Last 4 events. One you're looking forward to, one you're dreading.
The one I'm looking forward to would probably be Watauga, because I feel like Watauga's been, I feel like it's going to be a little more consistent. I am looking forward to our next one, but I think Watauga is going to be one of those tournaments. If it does hit right, I think it could be a really good tournament for a lot of people. I think it could be a fun tournament where we catch a lot of fish and we see a lot of big fish come in.
Yep.
One I'm dreading, Boone. I mean,
which one? Boone Classic or the Boone October?
Both.
Just Boone.
Just Boone. I mean, and don't take me wrong. I think that there could be a lot of good fishing go on. It's just an unknown right now. We haven't seen it. It's an unknown. I mean, I really do think we need to kind of stick with it, take our licks, and learn from it and see what we can get out of it. And I think the challenge is going to be the best part of it. And I mean,
I agree.
I think it's going to be a good time. I think it's going to be good.
Well, I would have to say that I'm probably looking forward to Watauga's going to be high on my list, but I'm really looking forward to that Boone tournament in at the end of November, just because I think the fishing is going to be so good. I think Boone's going to cool off really quick. It's going to be truly into that fall feed, and they're going to be ready to eat. I think that Boone Classic is going to be awesome.
I think I'm going to catch a lot of striper that day.
Well, that is true. I mean, hey, we may do a 3 fish limit and a trash fish. You can weigh in. You can weigh in 2 fish, 2 bass, 2 black bass, and then a trash fish, and that'll account for your weight. But yeah, Boone in October, I'm not looking forward to, but I think I'm still. I think I'm so excited that it's going to be daylight.
Yeah,
I think Douglas is my one that I'm dreading as far as night, because it's the night. So I will
drive home, all that.
The drive home. It's all that goes with it. I won't whine about that anymore. But yeah, I think Douglas is probably the one I'm dreading the most, except for the fact that it's 12-inch largemouth. I feel like we're going to get bit. But I'm definitely looking forward to that Boone at the end of November. So guys, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Kelsey, thank you for co-hosting again. As we get into the fall, we finally get back into some fishing. We'll be doing some more of these more regularly, have some YouTube videos for y'all again of our fishing. I haven't been doing any filming at night. We just been surviving. So we're getting ready to kick off this fall season, and it's about to hit heavy and fast. So we'll have some videos for you. We'll have some more shows for you all. And now that Kelsey's done with some schooling, we may even get out there and get some more on the water how-tos done for you this winter, guys.
We need to do it.
Wintertime fishing is one of my favorite things to do. The fall, winter, it's a great time to fish. I know some of y'all sneak off in the woods, start hunting Bambi and stuff and those gobblers, but I love the fall, wintertime fishing. So we may get out there and do some more how-tos on the water with y'all. But as always, guys, I hope y'all have a great rest of this week or this week coming up. Hope y'all get a chance to get out on the water and don't get your feelings hurt too bad. Kelsey, you got any words of advice for the hot dog days of summer, man?
Just stay safe and stay hydrated. It's the biggest thing.
No cramps, guys. No cramping up on the hook sets. Guys, we'll see y'all later. Y'all have a great one.